Hey everyone, so we're going to take a look at file types. We actually covered this in week 1, and then whenever we save files, I mention what type of files we're saving them for and why. But if you take a look at week 1, you will be able to review this PowerPoint, but I'll go through it with you here. So file types all have a specific extension at the end of them. And the one that you'll be most common with will be a JPEG. So what I don't need you to know is the full name. The abbreviation is just fine. That's what is most common. And so the first one we're going to look at is a JPEG. And that's, again, the one you'll be most familiar with. Your camera shoots JPEGs. JPEGs are great for sending via email because it is a compressed file with what's called minimal information loss. You can actually control how much you can condense the file. And so whenever we save a JPEG, the second window that comes up, you'll probably remember that I say, well, a high file at number 8, you have a range from 0 to 12, but 8 is usually fine. If you're sending it to a printer for them to reprint, then you always save it at the highest level at number 12. And then if you're sending it via email, you can always save it at a lower resolution, at a lower condensed version. So even 2 or 3 is fine. And you'll notice that the file size greatly changes even though it's still a compressed file. So a JPEG is one of those files that are fantastic. It can recognize 16 million colors. One thing about JPEGs though is they don't support a transparent background, meaning that if you had saved your logo from Illustrator and you decided to export it as a JPEG to use online in digital format, the problem with that is, or if you even exported it for placing in your InDesign file, the problem with that is it doesn't support a transparent background, meaning you have to have color in there even if it's white. So when we take a look at JPEGs, JPEGs are great for digital format. JPEGs are great for sending. They're great for compression because you can control the amount of compression, but they do not support a transparent background. And so that's JPEG. The next file we're going to look at is it's a graphics interchange format. One of the key things you have to remember here for a GIF file is that it contains a maximum of 256 unique colors, meaning out of 60 million colors, you can choose 256 of those, but that's all it supports. It also cannot, absolutely not, support CMYK color. But the key thing to remember here is it contains a maximum of 256 unique colors, which is really important because these are great files for really small files that you see in the fav icons. So those are those tiny little icons in the search engine. So if you take a look at those, they're really super tiny files. They don't need to hold much information. And so that's what they're great for. GIF files can also support transparent backgrounds, but only 100%. So that means it can be 100% blank background or 100% color background. It can't do anything like gradients where a background like a drop shadow might fade off and you could actually see the picture through the fade off. It doesn't work that way. So these are tiny little images. They're great. They load quickly. But they cannot, they're so tiny, they would be the worst file for printing. So GIF file, graphics interchange format, contains a maximum of 256 unique colors, best for web applications. They load quickly, but horrible for print. Moving on to a PNG, a portable network graphic. Now these are meant solely for web distribution and display. It has lossless data, which means it loses zero quality when compressed, but they are not print worthy. And they also don't support CMYK. And that is the key element to remember here for a PNG. They do not support CMYK and therefore are no good for print. Now we move on to the Tiff. Now we don't see these as often anymore because JPEGs, the quality of JPEGs has greatly improved over the years. And so we see a lot of that happening. Photographers tend to save TIFFs. Many years ago, before EPS, which is our next file type that we're going to look at, TIFFs used to be industry standard for placing images into files like Quark, which was the precursor to InDesign. But the problem with it is they're huge. The file size is massive. So it's great for photographers when they're saving large format photography, but a horrible, horrible, not so great file for everything else. It's also not meant to handle text or vector data, although it can, just like an EPS file, but it's not your best option for that. So the next file type is EPS. Now, as you know, we've been saving EPS files from Illustrator. And Illustrator is a format that is line art filled with color, which is vector format. If we were creating a raster image is what we save in Photoshop, or what we create in Photoshop, and I'll get into that in a little more detail after we cover a couple more file types. So an EPS is what's called an encapsulated postscript, and there are actually two different distinct types of files with EPS. One is for vector-based graphics like logos, so that we can increase their size without losing any quality of the image because of the line art. But the other is it can be set for flattened set resolution. So we can set it to a specific size and a specific resolution per inch. And those are the types of files we now save for inserting into InDesign. You'll notice that I have been just having you save JPEGs to put in your InDesign file, which is fine. But if we were sending our InDesign file off to a printer, we would want to convert all our JPEGs into properly cropped by size and resolution files. Replace all of those images throughout our documents for best quality printing. The other thing that we can do with an EPS is it can contain text, images, graphics, and even full page layouts. So if you're building a poster in Illustrator, you can save it as an EPS. And again, you can save these incredibly high quality, can blow up to much larger sizes, based on the fact that an EPS can hold vector information, which is fantastic for logos. The next and last file type we're going to cover is, there are several more, but we're going to use the basic list, which are pretty standard throughout the graphic design world among marketers as well. And a PDF is a portable document format. And the great thing about a PDF is it preserves all your source file information, including text, images, vector graphics, illustrations, everything. So basically what it does is it embeds your fonts, your photos, and everything. So in InDesign, we've been working with the links palette. And in the links palette, you'll find a list of all your photos. But if you have a red question mark, it means the link is missing. When you create and export a PDF file from InDesign, it will embed your fonts. It will embed your photos. So you have a single file to send to the printer, not a folder full of links and other types of files to send them. So it's an incredibly portable file, hence the name, portable document format, and is industry standard for sending off to a printer. Also great for sending via email, for campaigns via email. One thing though, Facebook does not allow you to upload them because they don't have an agreement with Adobe. So that is why you will see that you can upload a JPEG, but you can't actually upload a PDF for view. You can share a link, of course, to a PDF that you've uploaded to the internet. You just can't actually upload a PDF. So this is the industry file type for printing. Also remember PDF X1A. That is a key thing to remember as well. That is our industry standard. Some printers have moved up to PDF 4, So that just means that they have the software and able to handle a higher grade of a PDF. Moving on to vector versus raster. This is very, very important. We've been working on this with our logo. So vector images are made up of paths or strokes that are filled with color. So just think of it as line art. And you lose no resolution when you look at a vector graphic. The more we zoom in, it still looks like line art filled with color. So this is the proper type of file, a vector image that you would then save as an EPS file in order to preserve the vector formatting. Extremely important for logos. And last but not least, let's cover raster. So raster, a data structure made up of a pattern of points or pixels. So when we were working in Photoshop and we zoomed in on that image, our image looks like it's made up of a bunch of mosaic tiles, essentially. So a bunch of little squares. And so the more squares you have per inch, the sharper the image appears at a size. So if we took a look at a digital file at 72 dots per inch, please remember that number, 72 dots per inch for digital screen space. We look at that screen and it's 4 inches wide on the screen and it looks fantastic. And then we print that file out and it's being forced to print 72 dots per inch into a 300 dots per inch format. So each of those squares, 72, now have to enlarge to fill 300 dots per inch. So that is why your images look like they break down. So that is why it's so important that you also remember this. 300 dots per inch is for print, 72 dots per inch for digital. When we were creating anything in Photoshop, we always want to work with the highest number, the 300, so that we can always go down, we can always resave at 72 for the digital space. But if we're using it in both print and digital space, we must save at 300 dots per inch. For print, we can always go down, but you can't go up. So that is our review on file types and vector versus raster.